Yeah, good afternoon and welcome everybody. First of all, thank you to Kajaria and Design Unfiltered for organizing this. Uh, so I'll start with the introductions. I'm Sharath. I'm an architect working with Biome Environmental Solutions. And as far as the panelists go, that's Chetan Shivaprasad. I'll keep the introduction short. Chetan has been, he's the founder of Kham Design, which is a design practice based in Bangalore, and it was established in 1997. Uh, Chetan deals, Kham Design rather deals with different nuances of space, including architecture, interiors, products, theater, and art installation. And Chetan is the source behind its ideology and thinking. Uh, Beyond Kham, he also devotes a lot of his time as a visiting faculty in various architecture and design schools in the country. He has been active in organizing several design camps and to promote critical design dialogues between students and professional communities through Hampi Center of Design. He is also an avid traveler interested in cultural studies. Chetan has published several papers, uh, including on use of resource efficient brick in building construction. So, in Chetan's words, Kham Design isn't just a place of blueprints and deadlines. It's become a buzzing hub, a classroom, research lab, and often a lively gathering spot for people who care deeply about design's impact. Chetan's biggest inspiration doesn't come from trend reports or glossy magazine. It comes from nature itself. That's next to Chetan is R. Ramalakshmi. Rama, along with Surbhi Shingare, co-founded Samvad Design Studio in 2015 in Bangalore. The architecture practice is focused on interpreting context responsiveness to create contemporary built environments with attention to tectonic and typological inventiveness, structural and material explorations. The practice explores a range of scales and typologies ranging from convention centers, institutions, schools, cultural centers, community centers, housing to residential projects. The firm pursues architecture practice, writing and teaching in continuum. Next to me is Vijaya Bhargava. Vijaya is the co-founder of Ostraca, a niche architecture and interior design firm in Bangalore, along with Arnab Ghosh. She has a career spanning 27 years. She's worked with a diverse portfolio of local and multinational clients across India. Her professional journey designing, she began a professional journey designing institutional, industrial, commercial, and hospitality projects, eventually specializing in corporate office spaces. Vijaya is also closely associated with academia, sharing her knowledge as a guest lecturer in design and business management institutions. Beyond her professional pursuits, Vijaya has contributed her architectural expertise to charitable organization. A founder member of Sankalp Trust, Vijaya supports educational pursuits by enabling children from underprivileged background to access professional courses. Deeply inspired by Indian culture and heritage, she often integrates traditional elements in her design. Her passion for Indian handlooms has led her to support weaver communities, helping preserve indigenous weaving and textile traditions. Beyond architecture, she explores jewelry designs, has hosted boutique exhibitions, and even modeled for renowned jewelry and handloom brands. An avid coffee enthusiast, she runs an Instagram blog, What's Brewing, followed by several international coffee houses. On my right is Priya Joseph. Priya is an architect, writer, educator. She holds a PhD in architecture and teaches at Srishti Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology. She is a partner with Deepak Goti at Living Studio Architects. Her work focuses on material culture, design, history and theory of architecture, especially focused on material tectonics and using drawing as a method of not just representation but also reflection. She recently has got out a book which is titled Brick Architecture in the 19th Century in South India, Reading Buildings as Archives, which has been published by Routledge, London. So next to Priya is Swapnil Valvatkar. Swapnil is the founder and studio head of Collage Architecture Studio, along with architects Advita Suvarna and Arun Kumar Devi Nayagam. He earned his Bachelor's of Architecture from GCA Goa University in 2001. He worked with CNT and Mindspace Architects under Sanjay Mohe for 7 years. Swapnil tries to simplify complexities in design by responding to context, site, and fundamentals of design. His functional approach often brings up perspectives that are unexplored and encourages a twist for innovation. He has received several prestigious awards, including the IIID Awards 2018 for Excellence, uh, IIA Awards for Excellence in Architecture, reflecting his continued recognition in the field. Collage Architecture Studio was founded in 2009 and is a multidisciplinary practice driven by collaboration and a shared commitment to design excellence. Led by three visionary architects, the studio has crafted a diverse portfolio spanning residential, commercial, and large-scale projects. The studio's work thoughtfully connects design with its surroundings, creating timeless and efficient spaces. The last panelist is Pramod Jaiswall. Pramod is the founding partner and principal architect of Between Spaces, a practice he co-founded in Bangalore in 2010. With more than 20 years of professional experience, his work spans diverse typologies, including institutional buildings, residential projects, interiors, commercial spaces, and cultural venues. With roots in both architectural practice and teaching, he brings a keen analytical sensibility, a love for detail, and an enduring curiosity to every project. For Pramod, architecture is less about creating objects, but more about shaping experiences. He believes in the idea intentional simplicity, stripping away excesses to reveal what is essential, crafting spaces that are unassuming, meaningful, and deeply rooted in their context. Guided by collaboration and intuition, Pramod approaches the complexities of design with sensitivity rather than spectacle of forms. Through his work, he seeks to create architecture that offers calmness amid chaos, spaces that invite reflection and celebrate the simple joys of life. Alongside practice, Pramod has been an educator since 2010, teaching at leading architecture colleges in Bangalore. So, welcome everyone. I think let's get started with what the topic given to us for the discussion, which is money, material, and mindset. Right. So to set the context, I think for all these three, one, if one looks historically, we've always been building with material which has been local, available at hand, and with simple skills. Right. And with time, there's been an evolution. The industrial revolution came, which brought along with it mass production, the ability to move material in between geographies, which enabled that now you have access to materials which were not necessarily local, skills which were not necessarily local. Then came globalization and the era of internet, which means ideas were able to move much faster, right? And so what we see with this is that there are good things and bad things along with it, and it's influenced most practices here. Uh, One thing I can talk about this panel is there is variety in terms of how each one approaches their project. Uh, Priya is an educator and she's recently done this research over a particular material used in South India. Chetan has worked with alternate materials and an alternate approach. Vijaya Bhargava has worked largely in interiors. Swapnil and Pramod, they've worked on diverse projects of different types and with different types of materials. So in this context, today in the world of internet where a lot of ideas are portrayed through images like Instagram and what do you call it, Pinterest, rather than through critical dialogue, uh, practices still continue to do their exploration through a critical lens. So in this context, one would like to understand how each one views their own practice, their own work. So I think we'll start with Priya because what you work, or rather what you researched on recently is a very, very basic material which is used in construction, right? So, yes.
Uh, it's a large field that you opened up. But I think material is at the crux of a lot of things, and I would like to start with what comes to mind is like you said, industrial revolution, and that made the movement of material possible. In that, from the 19th century, that means you can have one particular type of material, another one. But that is what we see today, and that has become the bane of construction in a way sometimes, which we because you can source something from far away, you don't use what is locally. And one example that comes to my mind is very not architectural, but this excreta of this bird, guano, which was from Peru, and they would get all of it in the 19th century to build Central Park, which is in New York. And that means that also, so all this movement of material is really two centuries, and that's what changed how architecture is built, interiors are built. And so this poop, almost, of the birds was got from Peru all the way to New York to make this famous Central Park. But it came at a cost of almost slavery, of course, climatic differences, there is ecological effect. So I think the practices today, and also my position is a little bit more radical, but I think we really have to be very, very deeply embedded in where this material is coming from, what we are doing with it. And it comes at a certain cost, especially in the climate, that, deteriorating climate that we are in. And so material at the crux of it, whether I did brick in the book, but anything, even if it is the fertilizer which is used, which is nothing but bird poop, I think this transfer of material and movement of material becomes very important, which comes, which I think of it as movement in the city also. Sometimes we make these cities for movement and not for people. And that's something also interesting to think. Can we make our cities, can we make our neighborhoods for people and not really for movement of material and goods and things? So, I mean, these are just some thoughts I thought to just bring my positionality, which is quite, maybe quite radical sometimes, but I will open it up and not take too much time.
Yeah, I mean, one of you all, in this context of today, where materials can move between geographies, ideas can move faster, and then this whole thing of a picture being representative of what spatial design is. How would you respond to your position on space making?
I think for us, space comes first. So if I have to really put the topic in place, then it's mindset, which means that you first carve out the space, you look at it spatially, and then of course the budget, and then the material. So, or the material and the money, that part. So for us, it is about carving out the space and getting to the requirements of the client, getting to probably the context in which it is getting built in, any other physical parameters that surround the site. All that plays a very important role. And I think material per se comes in as a layer. And I think that's what it should be. Material should not dictate your space. It should be the space which dictates the material. And even going back, that was what it was. So if it was a palace or a temple, always the material came in as a secondary element or a layer to the planning. And it was never the first way around. So when it becomes the first way around, which is because of all the imageries that we see, whether it's the radical globalization, the thing to be, shown, or that whole idea of being loud there and being seen, is when the material takes a precedent and space falls back, and that's not what architecture is. And I think that's something which we should stick to.
But just as a response before we move on, do you think one can take material as a given, understand its constraints and work within that, and that you can still have space making?
Maybe, I mean, I'm not the right person to answer this, but yeah, for me, the space, for us, at least the space comes first. The planning just has to be there.
That's fine, that's your point. But Chetan, would you have anything to say with that? Because see material is something which is very, even in the visual, it's very dominant in your work.
Right. For me, I think I first start off with understanding that as a profession, we are working with somebody else's money. Right. So for me, I think my job as an architect starts off by saying, how can I enhance the dream of my client? And because of the kind of work we do and the kind of clients we get, material takes a predominance in our architect. But again, that is only a canvas. That is never an expression. That's only a canvas for various other elements to start playing. Of course, like you said, the whole idea of planning the space, understanding the volume, and the material, and for me, even sunlight is a very, very critical construction material for me, because it's what makes the space very dynamic and not static. So how it moves throughout the day and how it moves on a sunny day or a rainy day, all that matters to us, because that's what enhances the dream of a client. So for me, mindset comes in at one level, and then at the starting level of how people visualize their space, because sometimes it's also made up of memories and made up of our own Indianness, where there's no duality. There's always a maybe, always inward. You never drive on the right side of the road. You always try and go in different directions. That's the mentality of Indians. So we try and bring that into the architecture. We try and bring that multi-layering into architecture. So, but material definitely plays a very critical role in the way we express architecture.
So I would like to start with a little. I'll go back a bit. I was just reading 2 weeks ago about some architectural marvels in Calcutta, in West Bengal. And I'm from Calcutta. I was born and brought up, so I have quite a lot of interest in the city and the state as it is. And I got to know that there are these amazing palatial bungalows, which is of course in ruins. I mean, I knew about it even before I joined architecture, but never had never indulged in studying, in depth. And I just found out that very close to where I live, actually, I mean, my house in Calcutta is, that there are these massive palatial bungalows built in early 19th century, somewhere like 1800s, And these guys are those Richie Riches of Bengal, Calcutta, who started collaborating with the Britishers, and they built this amazing, palatial homes. And what was that for? It's pretty much a status symbol. They got the cast iron works which was done in those bungalows, all shipped from Glasgow. They used Belgium glasses, Belgium chandeliers, and somebody used even tiles imported from Spain and Italy. A lot of, furniture from entire Europe, So aspirations and image. So there's this, which is, I think, was there earlier also. Now with internet, of course, earlier it was in a small pocket, very small pocket, only the super rich could afford that. But now, clients are very well traveled, clients have seen the world, they have money, they are experiencing different parts of the world, different materials, and they come back with a lot of these imageries, a lot of these ideas. But as a practice, when it comes down to our own practice, me and my partner Divya, we both start with this sort of a subtle imagery of what a space should be it a residential space or educational space, whatever it is, whatever the nature of a program. So we start with this imagery of what the space should be, how should people experience these spaces, and then, the idea of materiality also comes in picture to help us in substantiating and reinforcing these ideas and thought process. So whether we use brick as a material, whether we use stone as a material, like Chetan said that there is always this imagery of how will this material look in the bright sun or in this rainy, weather. And of course, the longevity also, we add a little more aspect, dimension to this entire process is understanding the economics behind it. We do not subscribe to just blindly taking materials from the market off the shelf and just plonking it in our spaces. For us, spaces, like when Swapnil mentioned, spaces are very, very, sacred for us. So we do not want to lose the sanctity of these spaces, the importance. We want to keep it as natural, as grounded, as nascent in its stage as possible, as much as possible. So we like to keep it simple. Let the materials be there, where in your subconscious mind you are able to enjoy it, but it's not like shouting for attention. It's not like grabbing your attention all the time. So yes, there are influences, there are influencers, there are market-driven forces, like we are sitting here. So all these will be there. Let them do their job. We need to find our way. We need to find how to approach our practices, and that's how we would like to proceed.
With the advent of capital and material, what's the mindset? But here one is looking at what's the mindset of the architect as well as the client. So I was reading Alexander Zoynes and Leanne Lefebvre in this book, Times of Creative Destruction. And they say something very important. They say that since 1970s or even up from Renaissance, architects are complicit in looking at architecture as an act of object making. So they say you can take the Palladian villa, you can take Taragni's project, you can take Corbusier's project. They're all formally, stylistically very different, but they just have the same narrative, four narratives. One, they say, okay, we are creating this precious object and it awakens a sense of, oh, I want to own this piece. So there's a certain preoccupation with formalism, with the evocative power of architecture as an object of gratification and an anti-functionalism. To that extent, even though brutalists, functional rationalists were talking about scientific temperament, they argue that they used science more as an iconography, but never in essence as efficiency or principles of how to be frugal and precise. This is, so they argue, and one could concur that architects are equally complicit in this act of object making of architecture. Then, of course, clients are going to be not too far off the chart. So we do have inquiries where architectural inquiries are more about a vanity project and not about a discourse on human habitation. So I think both architects and clients have to change this discourse about architecture being a more human-centered activity, about inhabitation. Only then mindsets will propel us to look at how we can use this capital and the idea of material differently.
Yeah, so I mean, as in our practice, we have we are very fortunate that we work at times in buildings designed by a lot of great architects. So we worked in a building designed by Bota in Delhi, and then we worked in a building designed by Canon Design Studio from Las Vegas, and so there are a lot of things. I somehow feel all these architects, like all we should be, are very, very conscious about the climatological aspects of a place, and a lot of respect is given to the materials available where the sustainability is of great importance, and quite contrary to what we were discussing about that Bengal home, where people, even in Chettinad houses, if you look at it, because they were exposed to this global thing, they would just get things from Spain or whatever, and then use it. That is basically, of course, to show the ego or affordability or affluence is what was the thing. So when we do this, that becomes the start point for us when we design our interiors. For example, I was discussing about this particular institute that we are working on, a university in Ranchi. There we have a yellow brick. So that becomes a start point for us. So everything works around that. So that's where the conversation between the building and the interiors start, you know, and then the complementing floors, like the quota which flows in, or, you know, that's how it does. That is part of the interior bit of it. And, you know, as you practice, because with 27 years, when you start, your ideologies are different. Then later you mature. You basically, you know, make some mistakes, learn from them. And so the design philosophies also change, right? So when you do that, earlier maybe there is this ego of an architect which says that, hey, you know what, my building has to really show and say that, you know, I'm here. So that would be maybe a starting point. You know, as you mature, you realize that rest everything should speak, and the building should just, you know, work in tandem with the surroundings, you know. So, you know, that happens. So at times, of course, the material plays a very, very important part in the whole thing. And two things is, you know, always, we all know, brick always says that, you know, brick wants to be something, is what Louis Kahn said. And I apply this to every material. I say that what does this material want to be? So let's celebrate what the material is about. And at times you play according to the strength of that material. At times you play by pushing the limits, you know. If something is very standard, so how does it function when it is like curved, you know, how does it work? So these are something like, you know, nice experiments we do, and that's what makes our profession exciting.
So, Chetan, I'm bringing this back to a term you use, duality, right? Now, with us using materials, different kinds of materials, and we have this especially in Indian cities of today. There's a plurality that you see in the city itself, right? What Kham design does, and if you put a building of between spaces or collage or biome for that matter, you'll have a city with a lot of plurality. So how do you all see that? Is there a response at any time to the materials in the neighborhood, or, you know, I mean, is there any sort of a thought when you all design on these aspects?
I personally think that it happens because of each office's philosophy, and what drives that office philosophy. Say, for example, for Biome, it's all about environmental being at the prime entity. For somebody else, it's lifestyle. For somebody else, it's form. For somebody else, it's the wow factor, or like he said, objectification of a form. So I think Bangalore per se has had a wide array of architectural styles coming out, and I think that's quite powerful, because each person is different and each style is different, and that multiplicity of expressions of architecture by different offices is what makes the city very vibrant. I, you can't have, I mean, I'm not a great fan of Chandigarh for the simple reason that it's too monotonous for an Indian city. Right?
Sure, I mean, one's not taking a stand on it. I'm just wanting to understand how each one views it, you know.
I mean, I personally, we feel that it's very contextual and subjective. It's like, for example, we designed this St. Joseph's College of Law, and during our initial study of the context, the buildings in the premise itself, we figure out that there is a very old building which is existing there, and they managed to keep it more. I think it's more than 75, 80 years old, probably. So we studied the language, architectural language. Of course, the requirement from the fathers were like, Pramod, we want something which will, evoke that sensibility of a Catholic, colleges. And this is what we can do. Pediment, basically. And I said, I'm not the right person to ask for pediment for sure, Father, but let me understand what you are really looking for. And then we realized that it's the imagery of, what these Catholic institutions are, where these deep loggias, verandas, and these stone finished pillars. These were the things which kind of evoked certain sentiments, and they associated very closely with it. So we proposed that we should use, of course, they were in the main building of the older building is stone masonry building, which of course we can't afford, and as we go higher, it's not possible. So we decided to clad it, and then we also used, grit plaster, so which complemented the stone also. We didn't want to kind of have it completely cladded with stone, so which we kind of mixed certain part of it with grit plaster. So it's very subjective. Some projects we kind of try and understand, like I said, that we start with a story in our mind, that what we want to really project, what we want to really explore. So we dig deeper, we have our conversation with our clients also. And somewhere we try to figure out, what is their inclination towards as well. Now, we always come to a junction where, the material choices depends on, let's say, luxury versus cost, opulence versus, extravagance, right? So our effort has always been to, even if it's a high-end project where opulence is need to be expressed, the challenge is how do you express this without making it too jarringly loud, okay? And do not just make that project as a museum of material. That's the worst thing you can do to architecture. So we try to understand which material, what shade, what color, what finish of it will really complement and enhance that what we are looking for. Sometimes clients, they like something very subtle, or budget is a very big constraint. So we start understanding the nuances and then respond accordingly. And that's how I think how we really like to. I mean, I really admire and get amazed by your like Biome's approach, where you guys have a mission that you want to pursue this, but somehow I have never been able to convince myself that can I just work with one single material and then keep driving myself. That has I'm probably too young to come to that decision. That like we had this conversation with Chetan also, but then it's very difficult for me to live with that.
But do you need to push back at times to clients? I mean, I'm just taking this from another conversation I was in the morning where someone said, we had this few years of building a lot of these pediments and Greco-Roman facades and all of that. But then as architects, are we a service industry or are we a profession? In the service, you probably, someone asks for idli vada, you serve idli vada. But here it's a profession.
It is a profession, and at times, and I won't say that we are always been successful, but I would say 8 to 9 times, it's always about negotiation. How clever you are in negotiating, and we just talked about, even flying elephant, how they were negotiating with the challenges. So similarly, in our projects also, it's a lot about negotiation. There are places where we give in to the client's requirement and demands. We know that this is not really going to make much more of a difference for me or the entire idea of the project. So let that be there. Let them be also happy, because at times the clients, they fail to see, because they are like overwhelmed with this imagery. So to break through that imagery, it's very difficult. So you have to take those baby steps, go slowly, tread with them, walk with them, and then probably, somewhere just slip in your agenda and say, hey, you can do this also. And probably, and many times they just come back and say, yeah, I think it makes sense, So,
Yeah, I think I agree with Pramod. Many a times, I think also what has happened with internet, the good part about it is they are well informed before they come to an architect. So they know what association they are working with. And so that trade has become slightly lesser, which is what I feel is a great thing about internet. So before they come to you, they would have done a research for what kind of houses they would have done. So I think that. So I think that sets you at least as a good thing about the internet. So whatever, if it's Instagram or social media, I think clients come to you based on their choice of kind of architecture or a language that we want. So, I mean, to come to that duality question, I think it's really nice for a city like Bangalore, metros to have that duality and even the vibrancy, because people come here from different backgrounds, and that makes it much more cosmopolitan. And if you had a same kind of language set on a street, then it would look like some of our group housing projects that other officers are doing.
Sure, thanks.
Again, I'm just going to divert it a bit, just to think in a larger. What comes to my
We
mind
can't talk
is
about guano now.
so now I'm going to talk about tiles because we are sitting in a tiles, Kajaria tiles. When I was doing a little study on Bangalore tiles, which we all know, terracotta tiles, which really have been around, and many clients said, let's have something vernacular. Let's put Bangalore tiles. And that's where architects come, because I think we'll have to take many steps back, because then you realize Bangalore tile is a very European product. In the sense, the history of Bangalore tile is that in 1900s, the Basel Mission, which was a very Calvinist kind of institution, came and set up a factory, which we had these country tiles, which were handmade, and they were mechanized in these lockable tiles, which was great for the time. It was mass produced, but it has a history which is just beyond. I mean, it's also a debate whether it's vernacular or not. It could be both. But I think as architects, we'll have to take many steps back and almost like have this conversation beyond the everyday money sometimes, and we all agree to that in different ways. And maybe look at the history, maybe look at what it means for people, maybe look at labor. And I think that makes the building, the material use extremely sensitive in many ways. So to just know the Mangalore tile is Mangalore, but it's also Basel Mission tile, but it's also the first machine-made tile produced in India. And then, of course, like we see all around us, behind us, everywhere, we have tiles of different things. So it's good for us also to be sociologists and historians and almost, people in the public eye who have this power to make our cities and homes and spaces that we do. So I think it's a very, very loaded profession in many ways. And I thought this style example is good that we are sitting here and just to add to what you all are saying.
Thanks, Priya.
So, I agree with what both of them said, and see, if you look at it, people are different, right? We dress differently, we talk differently, our food tastes are different. So obviously the places that we inhabit also have to be different. And while you do that, materiality has a very, very important factor, a very important place in any of our buildings. So, yeah, I think it is just an expression of the people who are inhabiting, and like how Swapnil mentioned, people now know, and regarding that pediments bit of it, there are people who came to us and told us they want apartments like Acropolis. We said, then you are at the wrong place. Because, it's something like, as long as a designer is going as per their grain, even both of us get benefited. Otherwise, it's always like, there is this thing of it's against your grain and you're working along that. So money is not necessarily the driving factor for any one of us. It's also about enjoying work. And I always feel that there is an analogy between music and architecture, where if someone wants a very soft melody, maybe they'll go to Shreya Ghoshal. If they want something of a different genre, they go to Shautup, So it's exactly that. So people would have already known what you are good at, and then obviously, otherwise, certainly the experiment will go bad. So.
Our approach towards material is twofold. What is the tectonic possibility of it? Then how does it impact design? And second is what is idea of local? Give you two examples from our project. Idea of local, we were working with a really budget constrained 1,500 square foot gallery pavilion, and it all had to be assembled on a load bearing second floor structure. So we realized local over here is really good fabrication. So we don't shy away then from using very good fabrication available over there. And bamboo. So we realized the local variety of bamboo versus say one from northeast, they're different. The one in the local variety tapers after 10 feet. So the whole design starts with first the material and then the detailing works backwards. Versus a project in Maharashtra which didn't materialize. It was for an IPL setup. They wanted a cricket academy in SMB. And when we tested, and it was over engineering to do, and they wanted it like Buckingham Palace in mud blocks. And we said it doesn't work. So, of course, we didn't get the project because we said it doesn't work. In another project where we could do rammed earth, and Survi and I keep saying this, we stand on the shoulder of people like very tall shoulders of Sharath, Biome, where we learn then that you work with the modular of the shuttering sizes, then the room sizes are not arbitrary, where client says ceiling height has to be 12 feet, but repetition of those modules, minimizing those wastages. So that's a tectonic approach and idea of local.
We're talking about plurality, right? And your thoughts
On material plurality?
in cities.
Material
Yes,
plurality
yes.
in cities. I think
I'll try and use one more way of, let's say if you're building next to famous architects or an extension, you try to respond. But we rarely do that, in a cityscape.
responding to a famous architect.
No, that's an example I gave you. If there is one, people do try to respond, right?
Right. So I think the idea of local also keeps changing. Sometimes it is not entirely sustainable to say use wood. So then idea of time comes into what is local. That itself brings in plurality, I think, material expression and plurality.
So you all spoke of negotiation, right? And so with that brings this, again, it's also a mindset of how we architects look at it. Where does the ownership of the project or the end product lie with, or the authorship, I might say, because in the end it is a negotiation between different agencies. So what are your views on that?
I just passed out an adjoint CET, and I still remember Mrs. C for this. So she had this really nice lecture when we had like a orientation kind of a thing where she would come and talk to all the new joinees. So she was just telling us, she said, what's the best practice? So, an architect, a client walks into your office or with you as a client, and then he walks out when the project gets over. You walk out together as friends. So I think has stuck in me, because I think architecture is not something like art where I can just paint and sell it off. There's a client, the money is his, you are the artist trying to fulfill his dreams. The requirements are his. So eventually you're just painting a dream, or as I said, a dream or an image for him to be comfortable and stay in it. So I think that negotiation is extremely important for you to arrive at a end product where both are beneficial, and it's not one way. And I think that's probably what I feel is the most enhancing part of architecture.
I would look at it as, it's a collaboration. So today's world we live in, it is all about collaboration. There is no, gone are those days where you say that there is this master architect, let's say Cobb or Frank Lloyd Wright, and they'll do whatever they want. You can go butt naked in a client's house and paint the wall, and the client will just spare you. Today they'll sue you on us. But the thing is that, like Swapnil said, that you have to walk together. There will be, of course, in fact, at the beginning of our, when we are trying to get onboarded on a project, we tell our client very clearly that if you are hoping that you come with some images and show it to us and I'll give you exactly, then you should look for a tailor. Don't look for a designer. But if you are going to work with me, let's walk together. Let's have this discussion. I might even fight with you also, argue with you also. But if you're open for that, I can assure you, you'll get amazing projects. Because it will be very naive of me to say that, clients have nothing to offer today. No. A lot of our cues, comes from them, their lifestyle, small little idiosyncrasies, their stories. So I think we'd like to draw that from them. Then it becomes that there is a sense of ownership also. When there's a story which is molded based on their life, now see, you can be genuine about it, you can be a little, I would say crooked about it and weave the story around however you want to approach. But the point is that clients should be part of it. They should feel that they are part of it. And of course, there will be a lot of places where you can sneak in your agenda as well to get the final end project. So end of the day, it's a collaboration.
I think same answer, but for us it even goes beyond the client and the architect. It goes to the mason, his skill set, the centering material, the finish of that material, everything, right? So I think it's a collaboration of all of this to come out with a final product. So yeah, we are only a trigger for those thought processes to happen. But I think then if you don't respect the mason doing his job right, sometimes we ask him to make a mistake to make that space better than what we have drawn. Right? So you allow that space for various participants to work on. And that is what makes that multi-layering of that experience.
We are always trying to see if there's a dialogue possible with the client. For instance, when we were doing a school for Aurobindo Mission and they said we want an Ivy League type school with brick cladding. It didn't come from a bad place. We tried to see if we can reinterpret the brick cladding as a brick fin, and then we show examples of Golconda and see this can be a performative skin and not just a facade. So I think if there's some reasoning, they see light many times.
Yeah, so I would like to talk about an interesting project that we've done, and this is for a residence where one of my clients during the COVID time bought a house which was designed by one of the prominent architects known for very, very modern buildings. And so they came to us saying that, you know what, there are no more sites available. That's why we bought a site with the building. And we want to pull it down because it's quite cold for a home because it's got fair-faced concrete. And I don't think, I can relate to that particular material. So we said, okay, we hear you. And then we said, what is your idea of a home? They said, it's a Spanish hacienda. I said, okay, fine, there we go. And that's when, the thing started getting very interesting because this same client whom we made a house for about 20 years back, the reason why he came back to us because he says that I can't find a single fault with the place that you've done, and if you understood our lifestyle and it still continues to make us feel like home, then you are the best guys. So I said, okay, that's a great compliment, so we will do this. But so how to address this hacienda bit of it? So we made two plans. One, retaining the way the building was, and the other thing was just considering as a clean slate. So at the planning level, more or less everything was similar because obviously you have a space program, we know their lifestyle. So it was all panning out fine. Now how to handle the materiality bit of it. So we said, at times we architects get a bit too caught up with the, purity of architecture and so-called words. And we ignore what the client actually wants. So that is when your maturity comes in and says that you are building for the client. We all agree that. The whole panel agrees that we are actually building with their money and for them. So, that's when we said that, we are just going to do a bit of interventions on the existing building. And so now the building, which is almost nearing completion, has got fair-faced concrete which is on the exterior, so which doesn't disturb the lady who stays in the house, so that she doesn't feel the house to be cold. And she still has arches in the lower floor. And we mixed both, and they're like super happy, and so are we. I mean, if we just look back, maybe, you know, if I just take a crick from my fellow friends from the fraternity, they say, hey, what did you do about this? But, you know, that stopped bothering me. I said, you know, that's not what should be the driving factor for me when I design. But like exactly what Swapnil said, he's like super happy. The client is super happy and is like raring to get into that house at the earliest. So, yeah, so that's what it is about, right? Yeah.
The devil kid again a little bit. You know, I think as architects we are also in a position sometimes to change the public perception. And also are other factors like standardized material, uh, like certain things. And if I can take the example of bread, for example, bread in a few centuries back, they would knead it and make it uneven and then handmade, wrap it and send it. And over time, in the 19th century, it got to be very uniform. The crust is brown because you can sprinkle the yeast very uniformly, it's machine made. And everybody started to like this perfection in the bread crust, the sponginess, which is exactly that. And so the public perception about uniformity and public perception about being uniform, standard, and that being great virtues came into being. And does it have effect on how we can digest bread, whether it's handmade or not really? So it's, I think, the same with material and the choices and clients and this relationship with architects. So it's also to understand what are the different forces which are guiding the choices of our clients, and do we have a certain understanding of what are the aspirations, like one of you said, and you know, to respect those aspirations and also have a keener eye on what's happening around and what's really shaping us also, because we are also changing. And I feel sometimes nothing is wrong with a pediment. That's what people want. Of course, it doesn't fit in a certain scale, we understand, so we refuse, or if it doesn't fit into a certain, you know. But I think this respect of where the client is coming from and the ideas she has, and where, you know, also understanding our own biases of a certain education in a certain time. And like most of us are educated in this very modernist kind of understanding, and that remains in architectural education, and what we build is something, sometimes I think about, can we break through this and change our own perceptions, our clients' perceptions, and then maybe the negotiate.
I think we have 5 or 10 more minutes, so shall we just open it out to the audience?
Okay. Hi, I'm Jaiswall from RV College of Architecture, pursuing my urban design and urban design MArch. So, is this profession all about negotiation of mindset and collaboration of materials? So, you all spoke many different things, and uh, with all your words, what I felt was there will be negotiation of many mindsets here, like an architect, client, and workers, and all. And huh? Climate, yeah, everything around us. It's the context also, it's the individual also. So designing an object in a neighborhood should actually give back something to the neighborhood also. So is it just the negotiation of mindset and collaboration of materials as what you all think so, or we felt?
So they usually, I understand where you're coming from. Being an urban design student becomes a very important question, you know, to address. I think whether it's a negotiation of materiality or negotiation of minds, point is that when we build something, it's going to be there for a long, long time. Whether it's a residence, whether it's a public building or an educational building. So I think it's also important how does a building sit on the street. Okay. So personally, when we practice, we also look at, it's not about the visual aesthetics of the building, but also the response of the building to the street where it is sitting. I'll give you a small example of our own studio. It's a small building on a 30-40 plot, right? And of course, we had our own idea of what our studio should be like. We started with this, on a 30-40 plot, and that was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when we were trying to figure out our own direction in our practice. But while we were trying to carve out, we realized that we are just trying to push in too many ideas in our building, and it was, becoming as chaotic as whatever we saw on the street. On a 30-40 plot. So we decided to start removing the inessentials, whatever we thought was really obnoxious probably, or not required. So we started removing, and we realized that it created a very simple building, right? But in the process, it also created a very beautiful relationship with the street. We have a presence on the street. You cannot miss the building because of the way it looks, of course. But what we also do, I can always say that I'm proud to violate a little bit, where I hate this compound walls being compound walls, and then leave a setback, and then you have your building. I like to bring the building gradually down to the street with the help, even engulf the compound wall, make it a part of the structure. So that it doesn't feel like, traditionally, when I came to Bangalore, I used to notice all the houses, they have like this beautiful big front yard, and then the houses are sitting, far behind. I could not connect with it. Coming back again from Calcutta, where the buildings are on the street, and when I walk through those streets, it makes me feel like I'm at home. And suddenly I'm here in this new city, completely lost. I had absolutely no clue where am I, because I don't see people, I don't see, the buildings are set in quite a bit. Not now, of course. It's violating in a different way. But in Calcutta, the way the Victorian buildings have been, at the times those buildings have been built, they had a very intimate connection with the street. So I always, whenever I've spoken about this in studios, I've always said that the best CCTV cameras are those people sitting behind those windows, which is on the street, and nobody can feel like they are in danger, because there are eyes always looking at you. So you really feel safe. There's that very intimate connection. The presence is there, which unfortunately in cities like Bangalore we are missing it because of regulation. So that's why I'm a little proud to violate a little bit whatever I can.
I'm Shruti from RV College of Architecture, same urban design. So as sir was telling, like material is the second layer, like space should represent material. So when we come to like architecture, space represents material, but sometimes material itself will become an identity of the place in the outside. So how will you deal it when you take a material as a second layer? Yeah, for you, but anyone can answer for it.
So, I think, I'll give an example. So there was this couple who came to us and said that do a house for us and 2 dogs. Now their requirement was that we don't want to maintain it, like, because you have dogs, maintenance becomes an issue. So we started, there the material played a very important role. So we decided we'll do an exposed concrete house. But the essence of starting it still remained the space, still remained planning in terms of volume, sections, getting light onto it. Now, what the material did was it gave us a starting point. That's all. So sometimes the material can give you a starting point. Sometimes, as he said, it could be just the context which gives you a starting point. It sometimes could even be the client requirement. And I mean, we did a house which was very interesting, where the client kept banging on our head that I want a public space separate, I want a private space separate. And then that gave us the cue to make it completely to like almost make it feel like two different houses. So, you know, the cues, whatever come, they can come from anywhere. A tree on a site can become your starting point. So I don't think it's something which is like, you know, rigid, that, you know, material has to be a starting point, or there has to be a change in maybe a tree or anything. I mean, just a cue that just can, a talk with the client can help you do that. So I think for us, it's always been the space and material follows. This time the material was there, but still it was with space. So probably it's with space, I would say. Not like material took the precedent.
I think somewhere I differ a little bit with the way I work with my practices. Sometimes the quality of material literally defines the kind of spaces we create. So I just recollected when you said the tree, we were doing a school which was on a leased land, so we had to design a building which can move and which can be shifted. So we had to design something which is removable and redone. So when we came back to the structural engineer and he gave us the regular column stanchions and the beams in steel, then we questioned as to why does the tree not transfer load on a 90 degree. And then we started inclining the columns to see how it works, right? And the material started behaving in a different way. And when you map it into your software, you realize that you're almost saving 30% of steel by just inclining the structural system and making a difference in the way the spaces work. So that started the whole dialogue on how architecture evolved for that particular building, where the inclination of a column defined literally everything else for that space. So sometimes material does become the very most critical element for design. Again, with this idea that I keep saying that since we are multi-layered and the kind of architecture needs certain roughness or certain unevenness for people to feel at home in the kind of spaces we do. And it stems from this idea that material takes the primordial space for us to start working on design, and then of course you put in the functions. For me, function is something which is not stagnant, right? Is it possible for, if I remove the platforms from a kitchen, can I make that into a bedroom? It's possible, right? Of course, the movement, other things change, but I think the quality of spaces is evolving from the kind of materials we use. Somewhere that's the kind of approach I have.
I'd like to add to this quality of spaces and materials. It's really just from the classroom where Surbi and I sat and Chaya sir was doing history. It's one of our favorite anecdotes. And he was talking about exposed concrete. And he said he'd always break it down for students to understand. And he gave this session about, have you walked around Tarawando's building? Just brush your hand all around it. You'll come back unbruised. Walk around a Corbusier building, you're going to have a lot of bruises on your knuckles. And the way you do the shuttering and the concreting, it completely changes the way you experience that space. So absolutely the tectonic of how you work, not just what material, but the manifestation of that material has a lot of potent quality to space making.
I think just to take this same point further, like there's a difference between how, you know, Corbusier and Khan uses material. Khan is more inclined towards brick, and his idea of building is like an institution. You know, whatever he designs, it's like an institution where there's this sort of a grandeur of a certain kind. Corbusier also looks at this grandeur in a different way, which is very crude, very cold, you know, in a brutal sense actually. And both the examples you see the material being used is reinforcing their idea and their perception of what architecture should be. I think it's very difficult to say that what comes first. You know, I think it is connected together. You have an idea. How do you make that idea work? So you need a material for that for sure. Now, if you say that, hey, I have brick, and I want to make this building, or I have concrete, I want to make something like this, I feel, I think ideas are more important about, you know, once you have an image, once you have a thought process that this is what I would like to do, material is just going to be an accessory, you know, a tool to achieve that.
Hi, thank you all for all your wonderful thoughts. I would like to ask a question. Some of the panelists mentioned the dominance of image and imagery. I would like to know the panel's opinions, some of your opinions on the rise of decor, styling, and photography. The rise of the advent of decor, styling, and photography, and styling.
Yeah. So it's also about like how each one of us address a design problem, right? Some people start with the material. Some people have because I keep seeing a lot of designers in the studio. Some people have a final picture in their mind and they work backwards. Some people like have the start point, like, you know, for some people is a site context and things like that, and then they develop on it. So it all depends on that, and also it also depends on your experiences. For example, like how whenever I kind of talk about architecture, for me it's a lot of things put together. You know, it's about music, it's about fashion. For example, you know, materiality. How do I come to it? Let us say I want a person whom I'm kind of making a garment, whatever for. You know, if I want the flow to be there, then that is the material, like, you know, satin or something I'll choose. If I want something where people, I need a very stiff look, where a sculptural look, maybe I'll go with a fabric which can be just, you know, have a starch on it. You know, if I want a very kind of a softness to the whole fabric, maybe I would just tell them that, you know, I want, maybe then the texturality becomes more. I don't want it to be loud, so there won't be a print, but it will be self-on-self texture, you know. So there are a lot of these things which happen. So while I always believe that architects are artists, they are musicians, they are photographers, they are whatever. So I think it's all about that. So I don't know whether I answered your question, but
It's very political.
and I'm like,
No, but I guess, yeah, I know. No, I get where you're coming from, and I think sadly, that's what is the state of our profession today. And I remember a time when we were students, and everybody told me that Bharat Bhavan is so good and you really need to see it. I mean, and then my senior came and showed me the book. He said, see, this is Bharat Bhavan. For that first instance, if you look at photographs in Charles Correa's book, I don't think you get any clarity of what that space is. And just at the end of my architecture schooling, I went there. And I thought I would spend only 10 minutes because that preconceived notion was there because I was seeing the photographs, that this is not worth more than 10 minutes. But I stood there for 3 hours continuously, just going, trying to explore the building. So architecture, sadly, today is looked from images. All our publications are doing that. All our, I mean, Komal is here. Journalism is about that. Appreciation is also on photographs. Well, otherwise, architecture should be felt. And only when you're there in that space is when you know whether how that space behaves, what do you feel in that space, and none
yeah,
of them.
that is one of the reasons whenever I'm on a jury of a panel, I would, if the building is closer to me, I would love to go and see that. Because, you know, a lot of times I feel that, you know, whatever is a good proportionately done or maybe done up place is clicked, and then you obviously think that the whole building is with the same philosophy, and then you are so disappointed after you go there, you know. Yeah.
The
To answer your
photographers
question, that's
also
what
today are,
happens.
you know, it's become like graphical representation. You
Yeah.
set up that space. Many a times you don't even know what happens behind that
So
space.
for me, a similar experience was Jeffrey Bawa's buildings. You know, when you look at the photographs, they do look like ordinary country homes. And I think it's thanks to Chetan, I went with him to Sri Lanka, and when you experience the building, and then you come back and now when you read the building through drawings, it's a whole new world which you didn't really understand before.
This, I just to add my 2 cents to this is, uh, I think it's quite challenging in today's time because everything has to be Instagrammable. But you know the it's not so new, to be honest. When modernism came and like Chandigarh was made, and photography was also there, the stark shadows and imagery was so romantic and so much a thing that was also sort of for Instagram of that time. And to not make this, I think it's to do with photography and its history also, with, with design. But also modernism did that in a way. And I think as we come today, can we make, like you also mentioned, can we make tectonics more poetic? And that, the language of, kind of being good design, that may in a sense contradict the heavy dependence of visuality that we have in our profession. So that's something I think if we try, all of us, to go away from the visuality in some form or the other, it may just try to help. But it is largely a very visual world.
Yeah, I think I just recollected a fantastic experience I had. I'm not a great fan of, like I said, Corbusier's work, and I was a great fan of Ando's work. Two, like you said, two people working with similar materials but different expressions. But then, in a span of a month, I visited both Charles Courtiers' Ronchamp, and later, within a month's time, I visited the Church of Light. I cried in Ronchamp. Because the kind of space that thing did for me, in terms of materials, in terms of the light patterns, in terms of what that building stood for, I think I felt that Corbusier was on a high when he did that drawing. Had some substance or something like that, because I could never feel that kind of a space in Chandigarh. But when I went to Church of Light, which I adored in photographs, I didn't get the same emotion I had at Ronchamp. And there are two people, I mean, I of course love a lot of Ando's work, but that expression of Church of Light was only powerful where the concrete meets that light, that glass, and that was the only power statement for me. But as a space, as a qualitative experience of that space, I think Ronchamp took over multifold, frankly, but that's what my reading of photographs and expression of that space is.
Regarding styling and architecture, I'd like to draw a parallel from a book I read on Eastern medicine, particularly about Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. And it says that the death of Eastern medicine started the moment it moved from the realms of health into wellness, from clinics and idea of treatment to the idea of a resortification of health. And I think that is what styling is doing to architecture. The discourse is moving about making spaces for humans, this human centricity, be it at the level of engagement with material construction or space making, is moving into these realms of vanity project. I think that is the most problematic thing about it.
Yeah, I agree, but even in architecture, there is scenography. When you look at Baba's work, it's a strong example. There's a lot of scenography happening in that. This Church of Light you speak of also is scenography. So in a sense, uh, I don't know if it's right to say, but it's not very different from photography, maybe. But yes, but it is.
Yeah. And also it's a very haptic experience to be in that space rather than this kind of a voyeuristic experience of looking at the photos and consuming the space. And you can skew perspectives. I mean, Arc Daily asks for submission where you skew the perspective, where you do picture corrections, and that is not at all true to space making.
No, I agree. I mean, we also know professional photographers take out switchboards and other things to Photoshop. So
In my office, one girl she actually got out two photos. One was Doshi's recent book, that small book which has Doshi sitting on the staircase, and then next to him is that small teacup which is that stainless steel teacup, and then there's some books and pens lying there, and there's some cloth handkerchief. It's a cover page of a book. And then there's one more which has another building, which is, that is curated. And you can make out that because that cup is so much not like something that you would use anywhere. The flowers are not something that you can buy every day. So you know that these are two pictures, and she actually said which one is the real one. So can't our spaces? I mean, our spaces are like that. When you go to your house, you don't say that I'm going to put a runner on the sofa and sit there, right? Why do you have to take a picture like that? Why can't it just be as how you live?
True, but you can't publish your mess.
No, one more thing. One thing at a little larger level, if you really look at architectural growth in India, post-independent India, we kind of got two masters coming in designing, and that in turn defined everything that Indianness started becoming. Right? Say we had Corbusier and we had Louis Kahn coming in, and that kind of really strongly set up the kind of language all of us practice today, because the schools of architecture started following that dictum. And today we don't appreciate ornamentation, which is so critical of an Indianness in the kind of work we do. And it's looked upon as something which is bad, which is taboo. You go to a school of architecture and people are not allowed to work with ornamentation or looked down upon. So I think that's something where styling has been evolving even historically for us, where we've been influenced by Westerners, and the schools of design has been influenced by those Westerners, and everything which is being expressed right now is being expressed.
Whereas the West seeks our handicraft and
yes, they need our
textile designs
they need
and
our
all.
textiles.
Yeah. No, actually, there is a recent book which I read, Humanize, not that I agree with it, but it talks about what you are saying, And then if you, let us say we have like the so-called beautiful buildings which are considered by architects, quote unquote, as the best piece of architecture. You run it through a person who's a common man in India, he will never pick it because he can't relate to it. That's precisely why. Because, and I've seen a lot of architects, where they were projecting some school projects where there is this Rajasthani dancer doing some twirls and all that in their skirts, and it's all nice, and of course they've got international awards. I'm happy about it, but that's exactly what it's a curated experience. So yeah. But also, I mean, the other take, like how Priya says, to be a devil's advocate. If you have some guest at your home, will you be yourself, or you're all decked up and very prim and proper? You're not, right? So when you're presenting, you are always presenting the best part of you. But actually, when you get to know, or you started living in the houses, when you actually see the actual, quality of that space.
And I agree with you completely, because I think the onus lies, of course, on architects, but also journalism, or what we call architectural journalism, to it's a community of people who understand space, right? That's how it is, because it has to go beyond this visual and appeal, and so when scholarship, or rather journalism, has a little bit of that scholarship and it's more serious text, then even a black and white image will do. Even a not so stark image will do, because the idea lies in what you're saying, also with what you're presenting as a visual. So I think it's a community together who understands space, need to...
I think architecture journalism has become more elitist than architecture profession as this, with all due respect, because you know they are largely widely published two magazines in India, and the focus is very clear on these very upscale market clients and all, and it's very client oriented. That's why they publish also things, spaces, and if you don't have a fancy carpet and you're not talking about a very good, let's say, furniture setup from Minotti or somewhere else, your work cannot get published because clients cannot relate to it then.
In fact, now we have to give names of brands which have been used. I mean, I can understand the commercial reasons behind it, but uh,
No, there's one thing which happened recently where there's this YouTube channel. He went into one of the houses we had designed and randomly has walked in and had a interview with the owner of the house and taken shots of the whole house. So definitely not decked up, definitely not done. Underwear's hanging everywhere, right? That's the kind of photographs which has gone out in the YouTube channel. And I get a lot of inquiries because of that channel, right? Because suddenly you're reaching out to the kind of clientele I am working with, which is basically the middle income group guys. And those are the guys who relate to those spaces and say, okay, your house can also be like this, where they can be a part of it. So that's something which has happened for me.
okay, so we'll take one more and then.
But it could be a long question. I'm just warning. Is it okay? I mean, answer. So we have a diverse panel. So this is my question to each. So we have contemporary architects and we have all related to architects who are dealing with earth. So sustainability is the thing now, and we talk about sustainability fine. But what about the contemporary clients? They want from China, materials from China, all sofas from China, or all, I think China is the most, this one. How do you deal with clients? Do you actually, because we architects want to do sustainable designs, but it doesn't happen always with the clients. So how do you convince the clients and who are dealing with earth architecture, sir, and Chetan, sir, and how do you think we can actually promote this and make this a thing and say this is not boring, this is the thing which we need to think. If that's there, I think everyone will shift into it. Most of them, at least, most of the students.
I think this trend has changed a bit, for at least for clients that we are getting. Primarily because now there are a lot of good Indian designers doing really good stuff in India. And I think that change has happened again because of the knowledge that you get on social media. So social media is not that bad equally. So there are clients who are coming to us and saying, hey, this is an Indian firm which is doing good luxury furniture, why can't we use it? So I think that change is happening, and slowly but surely if we keep producing the standard that what the European markets were, I think that shift will happen pretty much sooner, I think. And the way we are producing, like I can name River, so many brands which are really doing some good design work.
Having said that, what Swapnil said, the furniture design industry or any of these industries are way behind where China is today. Let's accept that. We cannot keep, floating our own sort of this what do you call imaginary world that everything is changa. We need to really buck up. There are definitely a lot of talent. There are very good work happening, and there are very good designers around here. But unfortunately, the ecosystem is not allowing them to, expand so much. Plus, mindset also. Now, he might have a very good experience. I had terrible experience where you show them Indian product, they're like, let's go to China. Because I'm getting minority look-alike, what I was told by the sales girl, 99% minority, Please remove this from the video. So, I know. So, it's half the price. So, how do you really then have a conversation there? Client is looking at a premium product, or at least the look of it, and getting in half the price. So, the mathematics doesn't work really. So, I'm sure will reach to a point sooner or later where homemade, homegrown, everything can be. And I'll be very happy if that happens. I just went twice to China and I'm bored of it. I don't want to go.
You're talking about furniture. So, I mean, for us, with architecture, the one shift which happened is Chitra built her own house with earth, right? And when your architect is doing what she preaches, that helped us. And then we have a portfolio, I think, nice looking, nicely working homes, and that's helped. And I think now we see a lot more other architects also adapting to it, so we see that as a success. Coming to furniture, most of our clients have been cost effective, middle class. So our struggle, again off record please, has been how do we get that furniture out of the house really, but yeah, I mean, we've been lucky in the last few years that we've been getting clients who can afford and are asking us to choose furniture for them. I've been guilty to send one client to Europe to buy furniture, but then to the whole process of understanding, just like Swapnil and Pramod said, we've also found good Indian designers. So in one project we finished, we didn't go Europe, we did it with good Indian homegrown furniture. So, yeah, I mean, we have exceeded our time.
Hello. Sorry, I'm sorry. I also have a question.
I have a flight, so I mean, yeah, I mean, we'll take, yeah.
Last question, don't worry. I would say for a middle class person, the budget is usually very less, right? We have always have such budget constraints. But at the same time, they expect luxury. They always do. So how can we actually expect luxury? Can we expect luxury first of all as somebody with a budget constraint? And the second is what exactly is luxury for you?
I was going to ask you that. What do you mean by luxury?
No, luxury does not have to be attached to
Yeah,
funds.
I would say
But
this.
my question exactly is what exactly luxury is for an architect?
Well, I'm not getting into that, but with our clients, what we work at is how can the building improve your quality of life, rather than I can't even define luxury. I mean, at one level it's very superfluous, the word itself, but how can we make your life better? I mean, we've had clients with very tight budgets who we've managed to work and, like you said, negotiate and put your money into, let's say, smart water systems, smart energy systems, so you're not worried about tomorrow whether the tanker has come and do I have my water, and that's the feedback that we get, that in that sense, my quality of life has gotten better.
Okay, thank you.
So, well, to do concluding remarks, but then this has been such a diverse and it's interesting. Nice to hear all these different views. So, I'm not going to attempt to really put concluding remarks and get it to one. I'd like to leave it as open-ended as possible. But it was nice to hear all of you. Thank you for this, and thank you, Komal and Design Unfiltered.